Good morning, Marvin Sylvester here again. Today is Sunday, 4th April 2023. Where am I? Well, I'm back again where we all started, where I made my first video at Palmas Park, San Fernando in South Trinidad. Weather-wise, it's very overcast. Some sunlight coming through, but there's a lot of clouds. Rain clouds, because it rained earlier today actually. I don't know if you could tell from on the ground, all the dew, rain. So, otherwise, how are you? I hope all is well with you. All is well with me, as usual. And first things first, thank you everyone who's been viewing, liking, subscribing, sharing, supporting this channel. We are growing. You can tell when you look at the community that we started to reach. It's growing, and I am grateful for that. I'm very, very, very grateful for that. Where we've reached in approximately 4 months, couldn't have done it without you all. And I do know that we're gonna grow more. I do know that we're gonna get bigger, we're gonna get better, and eventually we're gonna start reaching a bigger audience. I'm very confident of that. So we gain many thanks. Also, what do I want to cover this week? Well, this week I firstly want to cover economic / kind of financial term. That'll be the main topic for this week to be discussed. And then I also want to discuss some other local / regional articles. So with that being said, let's start getting into it. So like I said, the first thing I wanted to cover this week is a kind of economic finance term, because it's a global developing phenomenon that I believe is going to start to impact us here in Trinidad and Tobago. And what is that term? It's a term called De-Dollarization. Last week I briefly mentioned it when I had that little segment where I said I was going to ask if there was possible questions that I could have asked the minister from his last IMF staff report related conference, and I mentioned the term there. So I know it's probably a term that most people haven't heard of, so I told myself this week I wanted to go into it a little bit more and to explain why it is I believe it will impact us here in Trinidad and Tobago. Right? So let's get straight into it. So what exactly is de-dollarization? Okay. So online I was able to find well, there are many definitions online, but I was able to find one definition on a website called christias.com, and this one was more or less, in my opinion, the best term to describe it. It goes: de-dollarization refers to reducing the dollar's dominance, when they say dollar, US dollar, of global markets. It is a process of substituting the US dollar as a currency used for trading oil and or other commodities, buying US dollars for forex reserves, bilateral trade agreements, dollar-denominated assets, bonds, treasury securities, shares, etc. Right? Dollar-denominated assets. Now, there are many reasons why countries are pursuing de-dollarization. And I am not going to cover those reasons because de-dollarization is not something that I am promoting or recommending for Trinidad and Tobago, right? I'll explain why shortly. But if you think about it, you might be able to come up with many reasons why people would want to move away from the US dollar. And if you were to go online, I'm pretty sure you would find a whole lot of reasons and articles as to why specific countries are doing this, right? But I am not going into that. So, and just to be more specific, for us as a small island nation, Trinidad and Tobago, me personally, I cannot see us ever pursuing de-dollarization. Can't see it. And I could explain why. Because if you look at who we do the majority of our imports and exports with, it will help to explain why it is I don't think TNT would ever de-dollarize. So I'll just give you all some information as to, because like I said, I'm not promoting de-dollarization and trying to be gonna, I'll explain why. I'll give you some reasons. So for example, I went on a website called Trend Economy, right? And if you go on that website, you're able to see some of the most recent data for 2021 on Trinidad and Tobago's main import and export partners, right? So let's look at it, right? So Trinidad and Tobago's exports by 2021 by country. Top export destinations of commodities from Trinidad and Tobago in 2021 were US, well, America, with a share of 41%, or 3.58 billion US dollars. Right? Exporter, this is where we send stuff to. US 41%, 3.58 billion. Guyana is second with 6.69%, or 577 million US. Mexico with a share of 6.69%. Sorry, Mexico with a share of 4.31%, or 372 million. France with 3.65%, or 315 million US in the exports trade. And Belgium with a share of 3.56%, or 307 million US dollars. Now noticeably in this top 10 list, I was surprised that China wasn't there. It was not in the list of top 10 exports, right? People who we export to. Okay, no problem. So, but just keep that in mind. US is at the top with 41%, right? Then also, in terms of imports, countries that we import the most from, right? Trinidad and Tobago's imports 2021 by country. Top trading partners, import sources of Trinidad and Tobago in 2021. The United States is at the top again with 34%, or 1.99 billion US dollars. Second is China with 10.5%, with that trade amounting to 605 million US dollars. Mexico is third with 7%, or 403 million US dollars. Brazil is fourth with a share of $5.6 million, sorry, 5.6%, or $323 million. And Canada is fifth with a share of 4.51%, or $259 million. So we see again that in terms of imports, the country that we imported the most from in 2021, and I'm assuming it's still more or less the case, is the US with 34%. So we see that the US is our biggest export market and import market. And this is why it is, I went through those statistics to state that is the reason why it is I do not believe that we here in Trinidad would ever de-dollarize or would need to de-dollarize, because our biggest trade partner is the US, right? So I don't want anybody to mistake or to misunderstand what I'm saying, that I am recommending that we de-dollarize here in Trinidad. I'm not recommending that. I don't think it's going to happen anytime now or in the future, right? However, there are a lot of other countries that are de-dollarizing or appear to be de-dollarizing, right? And I believe that this is going to eventually impact Trinidad and Tobago in the future. And there are a couple of ways that I'm already seeing, speculative, but a couple of ways that I realistically still see that we could be impacted here in Trinidad and Tobago. So I'll list two of those ways. So the first one is, remember we would have been saying that we need to get our LNG to Asian markets, because that is where different analysts, different people, were basically different subject matter experts were saying that is where we would get the best premium for our LNG moving ahead in the future, because we recognize, and I would have shared in one of my videos, we recognize the challenges that would potentially be developing in US and EU markets. Remember, as mentioned in certain reports where they were stating that the gas prices in the US are expected to remain low. Reason being is that they are increasing production, and there's also reducing demand for natural gas and LNG in the US. Also, you had, where I said, in the EU, they are moving towards a sort of buyer's cartel and a tendering process to keep prices low there. So basically, as I said in previous videos, and I'll still maintain now, I would agree with the people who are saying we need to get to Asia to sell our LNG. Okay, so getting a little bit of drizzle here, but we'll see how it goes. So you have that, right? Now, in addition to what's going on in the US and EU markets, I also want to put things into perspective. If we say we're going into Asia, some additional information that would help to put things into perspective why it is we need to go into Asia too. So I recently saw an Economic Times article that stated, it stated this: according to IMF projections, India is expected to grow at 6.8% in 2023, followed by China with 5.2%. Now remember, these economies are huge. When you're talking about 6.8 and 5.2%, this is hundreds of billions, probably trillions of dollars, right? The article also stated India and China will contribute to half of the world's growth this year. Half of the world's growth, half of the world's GDP. So these two in particular Asian economic powerhouses, super powerhouses, whatever you want to call them, are going to be driving the world this year, and undoubtedly in the medium term and long term, right, in terms of GDP growth and whatnot. And as these countries grow, they're going to need oil and gas, but we focusing more on gas in particular, right? And as they continue to grow and to expand, they're going to need gas. The demand for gas will grow in that region, And as the demand grows, price will go up. And if we are selling to markets in that region, obviously Trinidad and Tobago will benefit, right? Going somewhere with this. So we will make a good premium. However, one could argue that we're talking about de-dollarization as well, that both China and India are arguably two of the main countries in the world that are, you could say to some degree, I don't want to say leading, but well, China is probably leading, but India also as well is involved in the de-dollarization effort, the global de-dollarization effort. What do I mean? I could explain. So for example, recently China made its first purchase of LNG from the UAE. I think it was 65,000 tons of LNG from UAE in Chinese yuan. No US dollar. They made that purchase in China in their local currency. You also have where for the last few months India has been purchasing oil from Russia in rupees, which is their local currency. And of recently, if you follow global news, some countries have been, like China and Myanmar and a couple other countries, have been recently talking about creating an Asian monetary fund. This is something completely separate and apart from the IMF, so that they could, you know, have their own currencies to lend and finance projects and whatnot. Now, and the president of Myanmar as well made some very strong statements on it. You could always look it up online. Now, even though China and Myanmar kind of pushing it right now, this idea has actually been around since 1997 from what I've heard, but the point is it's now being revived again. And why? Because in Asia in particular, and in other global south countries too, these countries have their reasons for wanting to move away from the US dollar, right? So you have China and India, these massive economies who arguably have a lot of influence in that region, doing things in their own local currencies, and who may arguably obviously have no hard data to support this, but as they start to do this, they may be a catalyst to encourage other Asian countries to also start trading in their local currencies, doing business in their local currencies, and move away from the dollar. And you know, what could that mean for Trinidad and Tobago in the long term? Well, as I stated before, we looking to go to there to get the best premium for a dollar, because those economies on that side of the world booming, we want to sell to them. But I'll just using a little speculative theory here. Now, as these countries start doing more transactions in their local currencies, somewhere in the medium term, Trinidad and Tobago is, whether we get in or we start or whatever it is, we start selling our LNG in these markets, and at some point, let me just say for example, we looking to do business with these countries, and we looking to get payment, we settling the terms of payment for our LNG, and then we say for some reason these countries decide they no longer want to pay us in USD, they decide that they want to pay us in their local currencies. What happens? bearing in mind that these countries are not our biggest trade partners, other than China being second with 10% in the import part of things. Most of the markets that we would be looking to go to there are not our biggest trade partners. So in terms of us getting large quantities of their currency, if they decide that they don't want to pay in US dollars, how do we treat with that? And I just think that is something that is food for thought to keep in our memory bank, you know, about the way in which arguably I would say a large portion of the world is thinking, and definitely where some countries are heading. How does Trinidad treat with eventually where markets that we want to engage with no longer wish to pay us in US dollars, they want to pay us in their local currencies? So that's just one scenario, right? You also have another scenario where I believe de-dollarization could potentially affect Trinidad and Tobago. So there's another scenario where, let's just say, some countries may decide to dump their US investments. For instance, bonds, treasury securities, banking shares, and all these things that could create more volatility in the global financial markets, which will undoubtedly affect us here. Now, I am not going to go more into that, but I've been reading about it. But that is something that I would prefer to let a subject matter expert go into more detail on. But it's been constantly being repeated by a lot of analysts, and it's definitely something on, you know, on the minds of the technocrats in the West, and I think it should be something on the minds of our government here in Trinidad and Tobago, because although the probability of this happening is, I wouldn't say is very high, I could be wrong, I wouldn't say it's very high, but there's still a probability. And if it does happen, or if it is the potential for it to happen, we need to be mindful of it. Where these countries just decide to say, listen, clean cut, we want nothing to do with the US financial system. We don't want the treasury bonds, we don't want the shares in the companies, we don't want all these things, and they just started dump. Imagine what that could, some of the potential effects that could have in Trinidad and Tobago. So, in all, or in closing on this particular point, I'm sure there are other ways that, you know, more financial minded, more technical minded people could explain how de-dollarization could impact us here in Trinidad and Tobago. I've just speculated on two reasons, but again, I am saying this is something that we as citizens should be aware about. We should be started to make ourselves knowledgeable about it for our own personal investments and business and all these different things. And I do believe that on a national level, at a state level, the government should be aware of it. They should plan and hedge against it. How? I'll share my ideas on how in another video, right? Next article I want to cover is an article from BNA America dated the 4th of April 2023, right? It's Turkey's Karpowership, which is a company, caught Trinidad and Tobago. So I'll go straight into this article. I'll give me a little thing after. Turkey's Karpowership, Trinidad and Tobago's Energy Minister Stuart Young and Sander Gabuz, forgive me if I haven't pronounced your name correctly, sir, board advisor at Istanbul-based Karpowership met in Port of Spain The Turkish company presented its floating power plant vessels, which according to Karpowership range from 30 megawatts to 470 megawatts and can be delivered in less than 60 days. Flexibility was a key component addressed as these ships can be relocated to different locations, as well as switch between different fuel types depending on availability and affordability of fuels, the ministry said in a statement. Right? Gubuz was accompanied by Bengu, Mr. Bengu, I can't pronounce the last name, Turkey's ambassador to Trinidad and Tobago. In the region, Karpowership previously secured contracts in an emergency call held with Brazil and recently landed a contract in the Dominican Republic's process to procure 400 megawatts. Right? Now, all well and good. And I have a kind of speculative theory about why, these people are now coming to us now and giving us this this option. Tell you all my theory. Remember, this is completely speculative. I have no information to back this up. This is just a layman looking at things, coming up with a theory, right? I could be completely wrong, or even a little correct. So my theory is that you have, well, remember recently, almost a month or so back, you had where the minister had a meeting with NGC and other stakeholders. I think it was BP and Shell. And in that special meeting, I want to believe they would have discussed the production of LNG, right? Which is the main source that we use to produce electricity here in Trinidad and Tobago. And in that meeting, I believe there was the potential that these upstream producers would have said, well, hey, listen, until we get certain new projects on stream, Dragon, Manatee, Calypso, etc., there's going to start to be a fall in local energy production from the upstream producers. It's not going to be increasing, it's going to go down until those projects come on stream. And we as a country, we need to grow, we need to have especially our energy sector and non-energy sector based in Point Lisas, they're booming, right? Now remember that we also covered articles about Methanex, the Titan and Atlas plants, and we covered a story about the resuming some Trinidad and Tobago steel plant, right? The former ArcelorMittal plant. And I think with that plant alone, I can't remember exactly what it was like somewhere close to 20% of all the electricity the country uses. That plant alone would use something similar to that, right? I'll try and find the exact figure and reference it. But you have those three big plants, and then you probably have other people that want to invest in Trinidad and Tobago energy and energy sector based in that area, but they're not sure about whether they'd be able to get enough electricity or enough gas or whatever it is, right? But electricity in this particular case, right? And maybe the reason why these people are now coming to offer their services to us is because, one, as I saw on their website, because I went on their website, they specialize in dealing with developing economies. I saw they had contracts in Mozambique and Iran, Lebanon, and a whole bunch of different countries. And they specialize in that, and as you can see, Brazil and Dominica, right? Also, their power ships as the minister would have also indicated, could use different types of fuel. It could use natural gas, it could use LNG, it could use some kind of low sulfur and stuff, right? And also, if required, they could source the fuel which is used to provide power, to be the raw input for them to then provide power, electricity that connects to the grid. And I was like, that is probably the main reason why. The fact that they could supply their own fuel in the event that, let's say, they can't get it to them locally. They could get their own fuel to power the ship and then just sell us whatever, how much of our megawatts that we need to supplement our electrical grid, and you end up in whatever power purchase agreement, and we get additional electricity to supply the energy and energy sector and point us there. They handle the logistics of getting the power to us, and we just need to pay. That is just my theory. I don't know. Tell me what you all think. Like I say, I have nothing to back that up, but I believe all these things are connected, and who knows? We'll see, right? We'll see. So now I have my last story to cover this week. Last story, last article, right? Following up on that Alfa Nero mega yacht that was abandoned in Antigua Barbuda, here's another twist in this thing, right? So, same luxury launches again, article dated the 3rd of April 2023. Here the headline. Billionaire oligarch who owns the Alfa Nero also allegedly owns a $270 million super yacht that lies abandoned in Montenegro. So advanced is the vessel that it has 310 miles of cables, a 36-ton battery pack that lets it sail as quietly as a Tesla, massive satellite dishes, and more. So there's an article by Neha Tandon Sharma, and I'll just read it. A certain section of it. Alfa Nero, a seized $120 million super yacht, may have gone dark last year, but the vessel certainly put its owner, Russian billionaire Andrei Grev, on the map. A lot has happened since then. The motor yacht was hunted and raided by the FBI. The government of Antigua geared up to auction the elegant Alfa Nero that was moored at the Antigua Yacht Club Marina since February 22, and a new owner surfaced as well. The Gurevs may have denied ownership of the 269-foot steel aluminum boat, but their name is now linked to another stellar pleasure craft, the $270 million Luminosity. Interestingly, the lavish 351-foot Benetti boat is also sitting abandoned in Montenegro. So, another one. Abandoned in another part of the world. Well, so-called abandoned in another part of the world. And if you're going into the article, it states that, again, it was because of sanctions and all these other different things that apparently the owners just kind of... I don't really think they're abandoning it, but they're moving are kind of little hands off for now. But when you think about it, 120 million, 270 million, 390 million dollars in boats just sitting there, quote unquote, they saying abandoned. To me, that mind boggling. And if you thought the Alfa Nero was nice, and you follow mega yachts and stuff like me, if you thought the Alfa Nero was nice, go and look up the Luminosity mega yacht. The Luminosity is way better. Way better. So this is the world that we live in. Despite all the challenges with finance and energy and maritime security, all these different things. They have people who, quote unquote, not my words, but quote unquote, abandoning not 1, 2 megahertz. Crazy world. Anyway, that brings me to the end of the stuff that I wanted to cover this week. And once again, if you've watched the entire video, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. Please remember, if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you haven't done so. And again, thank you for viewing the video. If you've really enjoyed the video and you want to provide further support, there'll be a link to my Buy Me a Coffee in the description. Also, all the articles that I've referenced in my video this week will also be in the description. And again, many thanks. Only one more thing left for me to say, which is my usual, which is to keep informed, stay vigilant, and be prepared. I hope you have a wonderful day whenever you're seeing this video. I hope you have a wonderful week ahead. And, take care. Bye bye.